Once upon a time, there was a man who as a child had heard that beautiful story of how God tempted Abraham, and of how Abraham withstood the temptation, kept the faith, and contrary to expectation, got a son a second time. When he grew older, he read the same story with an even greater admiration. For life had fractured what had been united in the pious simplicity of the child. The older he became, the more often his thoughts turned to that story. His enthusiasm for it became greater and greater, and yet he could understand the story less and less. Finally, he forgot everything else because of it. His soul had but one wish, to see Abraham, but one longing, to have witnessed that event. His craving was not to see the beautiful regions of the East, not the earthly glory of the Promised Land, not that God-fearing couple whose old age God had blessed, not the venerable figure of an aged patriarch, not the vigorous adolescence God bestowed upon Isaac. The same thing could just as well have occurred on a barren heath. His craving was to go along the 3-day journey, when Abraham rode with sorrow before him, and Isaac beside him. His wish was to be present in that hour when Abraham raised his eyes and saw Mount Moriah in the distance. The hour when he left the asses behind and went up to the mountain alone with Isaac. For what occupied him was not the beautiful tapestry of imagination, but the shudder of the idea. That man was not a thinker. He did not feel any need to go beyond faith. He thought that it must be supremely glorious to be remembered as its father, an enviable destiny to possess it, even if no one knew it. That man was not an exegetical scholar. He did not know Hebrew. If he had known Hebrew, he perhaps would easily have understood the story and Abraham. And God tempted Abraham and said to him, "Take Isaac, your only son, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on a mountain that I shall show you." It was early in the morning when Abraham arose, had the asses saddled, and left his tent, taking Isaac with him. But Sarah watched them from the window as they went down the valley, until she could see them no longer. They rode in silence for 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, Abraham said not a word, but raised his eyes and saw Mount Moriah in the distance. He left his young servants behind, and taking Isaac's hand, went up the mountain alone. But Abraham said to himself, "I will not hide from Isaac where this walk is taking him." He stood still. He laid his hands on Isaac's head in blessing, and Isaac kneeled to receive it. And Abraham's face epitomized fatherliness. His gaze was gentle, his words admonishing, but Isaac could not understand him. His soul could not be lifted up. He clasped Abraham's knees. He pleaded at his feet. He begged for his young life, for his beautiful hopes. He called to mind the joy of Abraham's house. He called to mind the sorrow and the solitude. Then Abraham lifted the boy up and walked on, holding his hand, and his words were full of comfort and admonition. But Isaac could not understand him. Abraham climbed Mount Moriah, but Isaac did not understand him. Then Abraham turned away from him for a moment. But when Isaac saw Abraham's face again, it had changed. His gaze was wild. His whole being was sheer terror. He seized Isaac by the chest. He threw him to the ground and said, "Stupid boy, do you think that I am your father? I am an idolater. Do you think that it is God's command? No, it is my desire." Then Isaac trembled and cried out in his anguish, "God in heaven, have mercy on me. God of Abraham, have mercy on me. If I have no father on earth, then you be my father." But Abraham said softly to himself, "Lord God in heaven, I thank you. It is better that he believes me a monster than that he should lose faith in you." When the child is to be weaned, the mother blackens her breast. It would be hard to have the breast look inviting when the child must not have it. So the child believes that the breast has changed, but the mother, She is still the same. Her gaze is tender and loving as ever. How fortunate the one who did not need more terrible means to wean the child. It was early in the morning when Abraham arose. He embraced Sarah, the bride of his old age, and Sarah kissed Isaac, who took away her disgrace. Isaac, her pride, her hope for all generations to come. They rode along the road in silence, and Abraham stared continuously and fixedly at the ground until the fourth day, when he looked up and saw Mount Moriah far away. But once again he turned his eyes towards the ground. Silently he arranged the firewood and bound Isaac. Silently he drew the knife. Then he saw the ram that God had selected. This he sacrificed and went home. From that day henceforth Abraham was old. He could not forget that God had ordered him to do this. Isaac flourished as before, but Abraham's eyes were darkened. He saw joy no more. When the child has grown big and is to be weaned, the mother virginally conceals her breast, and then the child no longer has a mother. How fortunate the child who has not lost his mother in some other way. It was early in the morning when Abraham arose. He kissed Sarah, the young mother, and Sarah kissed Isaac, her delight, her joy forever. And Abraham rode thoughtfully down the road. He thought of Hagar and the son, whom he drove out into the desert. He climbed Mount Moriah. He drew the knife. It was a quiet evening when Abraham rode out alone, and he rode to Mount Moriah. He threw himself down on his face. He prayed to God to forgive him his sin, that he had been willing to sacrifice Isaac, that the father had forgotten his duty to his son. He often rode his lonesome road, but he found no peace. He could not comprehend that it was a sin that he had been willing to sacrifice to God the best that he had, the possession for which he himself would have gladly died many times. And if it was a sin, if he had not loved Isaac in this manner, he could not understand that it could be forgiven. For what more terrible sin was there? When the child is to be weaned, the mother too is not without sorrow, because she and the child are more and more to be separated, because the child who first lay under her heart and later rested upon her breast will never again be so close. So they grieve together the brief sorrow. How fortunate the one who kept the child so close and did not need to grieve any more. It was early in the morning, and everything in Abraham's house was ready for the journey. He took leave of Sarah and Eleazar, the faithful servant, and accompanied him along the road until he turned back. They rode along in harmony, Abraham and Isaac, until they came to Mount Moriah. Abraham made everything ready for the sacrifice, calmly and gently. But when he turned away and drew the knife, Isaac saw that Abraham's left hand was clenched in despair, that a shudder went through his whole body. But Abraham drew the knife. Then they returned home again, and Sarah hurried to meet them. But Isaac had lost the faith. Not a word is ever said of this in the world. And Isaac never talked to anyone about what he had seen. And Abraham did not suspect anyone had seen it. When the child is to be weaned, the mother has stronger sustenance at hand, so that the child does not perish. How fortunate the one who has this stronger sustenance at hand. Thus, and in many similar ways to the man of whom we speak, ponder this event. Every time he returned from a pilgrimage to Mount Moriah, he sank down wearily, folded his hands, and said, "No one was as great as Abraham. Who is able to understand him?"